Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Inflation shows slight cooling, but housing costs, food costs, energy costs continue to remain high. Federal Reserve signals interest rates are probably not going down anytime soon. U.S. job growth slows as labor market takes a hit. Consumer debt hits record levels. Housing affordability worsens as mortgage rates remain elevated. Small businesses reporting declining confidence and rising costs. Manufacturing output contracts for a third straight month are not as well as we had hoped. Energy prices fluctuate as global supply concerns exist. Federal budget deficit widens, raising long-term debt concerns. Oh, boy, stock markets are mixed. It's all going on, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Liberty Roundtable Live. Welcome to the Honest Money Report. That means Heath Perkins with us. And over the past 50 years, the Rust family and Heath have been putting together education on precious metals. How do you know what to get? How do you know what's not good? How do you know? Well, it's all about your goals. They're ready to discuss your goals with you and put together solutions that make sense. Consider freewatercoinco.com. That's freewatercoinco.com. Heath, welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Sam. Good to be back.
So much going on, so little time. Let's talk about the Honest Money Report. Where's gold and silver sitting, sir?
Gold's sitting just over 5,000 at 5,049.40 and silver is at 82.71.
82.71. What's that ratio? That's a little better than we're used to seeing it, at least in recent times, right?
Yeah, so you're a 61-to-1 ratio. So they're starting to spread apart a little bit more right now.
Now, the ratio in reality should be more like, 15-to-1, 20-to-1. I like the 20-to-1 just because it's easy to remember. $20 gold piece, $1 silver piece. They're both 1 ounce. That's the way it used to be before they started meddling, Heath.
Correct.
Pardon the pun.
You're good.
Before they started meddling.
It's I like that. No, very, very true. Ratios pre-33 gold confiscation were about 15 ounces or so to 1 ounce of gold, due to gold is more dense than silver. And so when they made the coins before the troy ounce kind of came out, it was about 0.77 of a troy ounce for a silver Morgan dollar and about 0.9675 of a troy ounce for a $20 gold piece. So the ratio is about 15-to-1. But post 33, the ratio jumped when they repriced gold to $35 an ounce instead of right around that $20 an ounce. When they repriced it, it went to about 27-to-1. So based upon pre or post 1933 confiscation is kind of that's where those two numbers come from.
And that's why I kind of stick to the 20-to-1 because it's not quite the 27 or quite the 15 or whatever else. It's a good solid. Hey, historically, 20-to-1 is a pretty solid deal. You do have $20 gold pieces, which are 1 troy ounce, and you have $1 silver pieces, which are 1 troy ounce, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so I stick to that because it's kind of an easy math, easy to understand, easy to remember. And then I usually stick with about if we've lost 40 times our currency. So whatever it cost back then, if you times it by 40, you get what it costs today. It's not exact, but it's the best kind of ratio we can use, which means, your dollar is worth about 2.5 cents if you talk about a 40 times slide or loss of wealth or value, right?
Correct. Yeah, we've significantly lost in the dollar, even more so. So if you look at that $20 gold piece today, that $20 gold piece would be just shy of $5,000. Yeah, it's insane. So if you're looking at that year, we're 250 times what that gold piece used to be. Silver is 80 times, 82 times that gold or that price it used to be.
That's right. Yep.
So these numbers aren't favorable towards the system that we're in with the dollar and the third party risk that we hold. But we've had so much faith in it for so long that there are still some that are leery of ditching the dollar and getting into other things to offset these consistent losses when it comes to inflation, and the dollar's buying power is just consistently shrinking. So yeah,
dishonest currency at the core, ladies and gentlemen, is the problem. Lying about face value straight up and then charging interest on top of it, plus the hidden tax of inflation, makes it an absolute disaster. Now, I agree. The reason I use the 40 times is because that's been the good average until we've seen gold and silver literally. Some would say it spiked, but really the dollar is just tanked against it. The question becomes, are we seeing a new reality that's going to be the case going forward, that silver is going to always be way, closer to $100 rather than $20 or $30? And that's silver. Sorry. Gold will be, more like $5,000 instead of $3,000. Is that just the new reality we're going to be facing long term, or is that just kind of a temporary bump or hit that we're seeing and everything else? I'm predicting it's going to taper off some, but it's still long term. We've seen a massive shift.
Yes, with these prices and with everything that's been happening recently, you've seen some pullback. Silver had a 40% drop due to JP Morgan and COMEX. COMEX decided to increase margin requirements for people who had buy contracts. And due to that, those closed those positions, which allowed JP to run the market down. And they got out at the very bottom of, what was it, January 30th drop. They got out at the very penny's bottom and got rid of all of their sell contracts that they were poised to post that day as losses. And so they made out like bandits. They got out of billions worth of contracts in the short position. But these are paper contracts.
And
so
that's
for us,
the problem, ladies and gentlemen, with the paper contracts in the first place. They win, you lose. And even if you were to demand possession of your gold and silver, they couldn't even deliver on what they, had promised or leveraged, if you will. That alone, in my opinion, is fraud.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of reports coming out. If we look at the pace that COMEX is having to deliver, and people wanting to receive physical, by the end of this month, COMEX is going to be out of metal. They don't have it to deliver. Dealing with a lot of coin shop or wholesalers and refiners and stuff, the refiners right now won't even take anything that's not pure because they need to melt things down as fast as possible. And they don't want to refine anything right now to get out to COMEX all of the orders that COMEX needs.
And all that's going to do is put pressure on gold and silver prices going up, because for those who can take possession, it becomes real. That's why we always say take possession of your metal. And it means there's going to be just more pressure. I think the prices are going to rise over the next little bit. I don't think they're going to go crazy, but I also don't think we're going to see them drop a lot either, right?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of potential drop unless the futures markets start to play more. I mean, they took advantage of a lot of the bulls in the market. They wiped a lot of them out that covered those margin costs from COMEX. And due to them wiping them out, there's a lot of bulls that aren't back in the market fully with the strength they had prior.
And they can't, because if people take possession or it's exposed that they don't have it, the confidence game will be over, right?
Yeah. Well, and during that drop, you had India place an order for 1,000 tons of silver. It's almost like I've been making this analogy. It's almost like the French Armada that showed up during Nixon's reign saying, hey, well, here's all your silver certificates that I can demand silver for. So here's your silver certificates. We want the physical silver. And then Nixon had to take us off the gold standard. And we didn't deliver on those silver pieces that we had promised based upon all those notes we had printed. It seems like India is challenging COMEX, saying, hey, do you actually have it? Like, prove it. Like, here's 1,000 tons of silver in an order to India. Prove it. Let's see the medals.
And that's why I say fraud's committed, ladies and gentlemen, because what they've managed to do is fractionalize not only your dollar and lending as a whole, which they can never deliver on, but when it comes to honest money or metals, when they make contracts saying they can deliver you the metal, they have, really fine print that says, but we don't really have to give you the metal, but we can this, but we can that, but we can. And what they're really doing is basically creating fraud by contract, in my humble opinion. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, no, very much so. they fractionalize the banking system with the money. They overlend based upon what they actually have, like the amount of loans that are out there. There is no money to cover those loans. This is just money created out of thin air for the banking system, and it goes right into the futures contracts as well. The people who never will touch silver or gold or wheat or any of these future commodities, they will make more than the people who put the whole process into mining it or growing it or whatever it is, and all the way to delivery. Like these future contracts, it's almost like the biggest casino in the world. The COMEX is just the metal side of it, but Chicago Mercantile Exchange is the main group that does these futures, and it truly is a giant casino house.
Yeah, they've been given special privilege pulling the lever of government in their favor via these dishonest contracts, just like the casinos have, where they win, you lose every time by government mandated contract. The absolute opposite of what government should be doing, ladies and gentlemen. All right, a couple of headlines. I want to get your take on what you think it's going to look like. Mm-hmm. Inflation shows slight cooling, they say, but food, housing, and energy costs still remain stubbornly high. Heath?
Let's be honest. The CPI, the Consumer Price Index, has been fudged for decades. The original basket of goods they had that dictated what the CPI should be, they've changed products in there consistently. They've never allowed anything on a day-to-day basis use like energy to be added to this to really give a better perspective on things. Like for instance, they used to have steak as one of the indicators in the index in that basket, and they changed it to hamburger. And again, hamburger is not steak.
Yeah, poor man's steak, right?
Yeah, I mean they play around with just the formula, and if you can play around with the formula enough, you can make things look better than they really are.
Well, here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. One dishonest act or one lie or one cheating or whatever you want to call it begats another. And that's why it's gotten like this, because, hey, you can't carry the lie unless you tell another lie. And you can't carry the dishonest move without another dishonest move. And that's really what we're finding. And at some point, I don't know when, and I pray it doesn't happen while I'm alive, but the fact is they're going to have to renege like they did in the Nixon era, go off the gold standard. In this case, what they're going to have to do is either commit a jubilee of some kind and forgive everybody's debt and then force them to move to some digital currency, or, the real plan should be to open up competing currencies so that good money can chase out bad money. But they're not going to listen to our recommendations at all. They're just going to do what they do. And I think that they're putting their head in the sand. They think they have absolute godlike ability to manipulate all the levers in their favor. They're going to be wrong, just don't know when or how yet. Federal Reserve signals interest rates may stay high for longer. Donald's going to go ballistic, Heath.
Well, Donald needs lower interest rates to get the money flowing again, because people have had such low interest rates for over a decade, since kind of around 2011 is when they really dropped. But, the 2008 financial crisis caused a lot of that, those interest rates to drop, so that we could kind of get back into people borrowing and money flowing in the system. But interest rates, right now they're not, based upon the last 10 years, yeah, they're high, but in reality, they're not high. And without us having those interest rates,
if left to the real supply and demand market, they'd probably go up a little bit more. Usually, isn't it typically around 7-8%?
Yeah, exactly. And for this to be, we've just been used to something for so long that we were comfortable with it, and now we're uncomfortable with these higher interest rates. And due to these higher interest rates, we can't afford the housing we used to afford, because when you have lower interest rates, you can bump the price on all the homes because people can still afford the overall payment. This is where I fear that Trump might go to that 50-year mortgage, because it is the only way to really continue the housing market to be purchased at the rates that they're at the rates that we're at currently, and to drop that monthly payment. But it's a 50-year mortgage, and the downside is it will cause more demand because more people can afford that monthly payment. If we do that, you're going to see the housing prices continue to go up. So
And you're going to
What
see
kind of
people
steps?
owe way more debt due to interest. I mean, you basically start paying a lot more for your house over the long haul and the interest rate. What I think they need to do is not worry so much about interest rates. Let them go to 7, 8%. Who cares? Even 9, 10% is fine. Let it go where the supply and demand lets it. And then the reality is you can tighten lending standards a little bit to make sure people really don't default. Right now, we're starting to have increased defaults like the debacle in 2008. But what they could do is they could just simply say, hey, you know what? House prices are going to go down because when you let the interest rate go up and people can only handle certain payments, you don't have as much government moral hazard in the market due to this, crazy lending practices. You could rein in the price of houses fairly easily if you tried. And right now, U.S. job growth is slowing down as the labor market shows signs of cooling. The reason that all is because, hey, you got this AI taking over everybody's jobs. You've got companies that were used to just spending and spending and spending, and no longer is that a luxury. No longer do they have that play in the market. There's just too much accountability. Money's too expensive to borrow, and the list goes on and on. That's why consumer debt hits record level amid what they say high interest rates. I think that's the blame. That's the lie. It's really that, hey, people have borrowed too much money, living too high on the hog. It's not the interest rates, Heath.
Yeah, we have a lifestyle, and a lot of us don't want to give up that lifestyle and tighten the belt. And due to not wanting to tighten the belt, we have to subsidize, the lack of the rise in our income compared to the rise in the goods that we need on a monthly basis or want. And we subsidize that with credit card debt, and it's nuts right now. Like the interest in the credit cards are insane, but at the same time, like I think it's over $2 trillion in credit card debt for the U.S. I mean, that's insane. And with our savings rate right around 2 to 5%, depending on what when you look at, the U.S. has a very, very poor savings rate, very, very high addiction to the existing lifestyles that we've lived, and we don't downgrade, we don't tighten the belt, we don't step back. We think that that's not progress, and so we put it on the credit card, which it's insanity right now. But there's a lot of people who have to
And
put it on
the sad part of people's defense for just spending all their money, they should be saving, but we don't reward savers anymore, though. You try to save money, and inflation robs you of your savings. And so consumer debt hits record levels. But the reality is it's going to be very hard for people who are saving. They're just not rewarded. They're losing money almost by saving.
Very true.
Right?
Yeah, and until you go back, well, and we need to. This is one of the things that we'd like to educate people on is everything that you use to purchase anything is considered a substitute for gold and silver. Gold and silver is the money. And yes, fiat currencies will always falter. They will always be poised to individuals who have greed and they want to do things without fiscal responsibility. And so you're always going to see excessive printing on fiat currency the farther away from gold and silver you get. And so due to all this, you're seeing people's savings. Yes, they are. If you're in dollars, yes, you're going to be losing a lot of that potential buying power because you're far away from gold and silver, the original money. Currency is not money. And so this is why nations are starting to go back to, central banks are starting to go back to fiscal responsibility with gold as their backing. Nations need this type of wealth in order to continue trading amongst each other and having the confidence that not in a currency, but in actual money. So yeah, it's interesting. We are losing with our savings accounts, but again, we're saving something that has third party risk, the dollar. As much as they want to print it, they can print it. And due to that, we are stuck with the consequence of them printing, which is losing value.
I think they need to start pulling money out of the econ game to reduce the money supply. That would help. I think the next thing they should do is allow interest rates to fluctuate as supply and demand calls for. And then I think what they need to do is open up the world to competing currencies. I just want to focus on solutions. But small businesses are reporting right now, Heath, declining confidence and rising costs. You wonder why? Well, energy prices are fluctuating due to the AI boom. You can't get memory for your computers, and Pretty soon, the global supply of energy is going to be challenged because of these massive data centers anyway. And then federal budget deficit widens, raising long-term debt concerns. I mean, every sign is in trouble. Heath?
Yeah, no, I agree. We aren't, and everything is coming to this focal point. One of the things that I'm very concerned about, along with the things that you had mentioned there, every nation is coming to a point where they can't afford their debt. They can't afford the interest on their debt, and it's simultaneous. Like it's not, part of the nations. It's almost every single nation is in such debt. And this is the struggle that we're going to have, is like we haven't been financially responsible through history because we just have a free printing machine, and we think it's a free printing machine, but that printing machine has interest attached to it, and we are paying, again, it's right around 90 to 100 days, every 90 to 100 days, $1 trillion in interest, and we don't comprehend these numbers. These numbers are insane to think about. Like the example that I give here in the shop is always based upon time. It takes 11 minutes. Or 11 days to live 1,000,000 seconds, 34 years to live 1,000,000,000 seconds, and 34,000 years to live 1,000,000,000,000 seconds. And once you start to gain a visualization of how insanely huge that is, we are in such debt we can't get out of this. The nation.
What's $1 trillion, ladies and gentlemen? And then what's $38 trillion? And then you got to ask the next question: what about all the unfunded liabilities and everything else? And at the end of the day, we don't even know, but it's hundreds of trillions of dollars. Really, at the end of the day, and eventually the confidence game, the con game is going to be over. The question is how we prepare ourselves in the meantime. I can't change federal policy. I can give recommendations, but they just ignore me. But what I can do is put a little bit of food in store. I can put a little bit of beans, bullets, and Band-Aids in store. I can get a little bit of confidence back by having gold and silver as my hedge. And where should people invest right now? And should they buy or should they sell? What should they do?
People should be investing in real commodities. That doesn't matter if it's gold or silver. I can help with that, but real commodities, whether that's land, food storage, things that will get us through a tough time. The big one that I've been looking at is seeds, the ability to replace the food storage that you potentially have. So if there's a bad time, you can live off the food storage and then figure out how to plant a garden and quickly do so to replace what you're consuming. We need to go back to self-sufficiency. We've gotten so far away from that type of mentality that overcame the Great Depression, and most of those individuals who went through the Great Depression have passed away, that we don't have that knowledge anymore. We've kind of discarded most of our senior citizens in these rest homes, and that knowledge is dying daily, and we don't have the ability to jump into it as easily with that knowledge that is passing. So we need to start figuring things out and become more reliable on relying on our community, and figure out what we need to do to be self-sufficient. We've gotten so far away from it that we're so specialized in one little thing that we don't know another trade even. We don't know how to repair small things. So there's a lot that we can be doing to get back to, if we need to tighten the budget and I need to repair something that I would usually call someone for, well, I need to figure that out. I need to start, expanding my own, incompetence in certain fields, and making sure that I start to gain those confidences and
gain skills, use YouTube, work with friends and people who can teach you. What coins should people get right now? What are you recommending based on the availability, etc.? Really quick.
Right now, 90% silver is at a great buy. So I would recommend that.
Dimes, nickel, or that's dimes, quarters, and halves, right?
Correct. Yep. That's those. So
all right, Heath Perkins, everybody. Thank you so much. Great work, my friend. We'll keep you posted. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Sam.
FreewaterCoinCo.com, ladies and gentlemen. You've got an honest money business partner. How's that? Think about that. Honest money, constitutional currency, ways to hedge when things go psychotic. Hey, pretty soon that silver everybody told you was a bad investment, pretty soon $1's worth like $83. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of thing. All right, FreewaterCoinCo.com. I'm Sam Bushman. Back in seconds. You're watching Liberty Roundtable live.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. The Minnesota immigration crackdown is winding down. Trump border czar Tom Homan says it's made possible by increased cooperation between federal, state, and local authorities in Minnesota.
We now have the ability to arrest criminal aliens in the safety and security of jails throughout the state at the time they're being released, like we've done in other states.
He says arresting a public safety threat in jail is safer for all concerned. After clearing the House, the SAVE Act is on its way to the Senate. Just one Democrat sided with House Republicans to approve the measure, requiring voter ID to keep non-citizens from casting ballots in federal elections. The EPA plans to repeal the endangerment finding from the Obama era. It provides the foundation for heavy regulation of greenhouse gases.
This will be the largest deregulatory action in American history, and it will save the American people $1.3 trillion in crushing regulations.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. China's carbon dioxide emissions declined just a little bit last year, although as the BBC's Justin Rolat explains, it is no huge deal.
This is not a dramatic breakthrough, but it means emissions from the world's manufacturing hub and second largest economy have now been flat or falling for almost 2 years. Carbon Brief's figures show a finely balanced picture. Emissions dropped across major sectors, including transport, power, cement and metals, but rose in the chemical industry. China also added more coal and gas-fired power capacity last year than in any year for a decade.
On Wall Street, stocks are mixed. This hour, the Dow is up about 197 points, while the Nasdaq is 82 points in the red, the S&P 3 points higher. More on these stories, townhall.com.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher. A lot of us are thinking about taxes, home projects we've been putting off, ways to get ahead financially in 2026. Now's the perfect time to talk to my friends at Fellowship Home Loans. If you want to lower your mortgage payment, they can help you refinance. If you need access to cash for home improvements or to wipe out high-interest debt, their fixed-rate line of credit is one of the best tools out there. Fast approval, predictable rate, and flexibility to use your home's equity wisely. Remember, many people still qualify to skip their next 2 mortgage payments. Imagine starting big projects or paying down debt with 2 months of breathing room. My family and I have used Fellowship personally. I trust these guys. Take control of 2026. Go to fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G. fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G. fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G. or call 800-510-MIKE. That's 800-510-6453. Fellowship Home Loans, mortgage lending by the book.
Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, DBA Fellowship Home Loans, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 819382.
Experience the untamed spirit of the American West with Range Magazine. Each issue is a visual journey featuring award-winning photography and compelling stories that capture the heart of ranching and rural life. Stay informed on the challenges and triumphs of those who live and work on the land. Subscribe today and receive quarterly editions delivered to your doorstep, and join a community that cherishes the enduring legacy of the Western frontier. Visit rangemagazine.com to subscribe.
Are you ready to stand up for your community and support your local sheriff? Join the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and become a vital member of the Sheriff's Citizens Posse. At cspoa.org, we empower citizens like you through weekly webinars, arming you with the knowledge to back your constitutional county sheriff. Together, we can uphold our Constitution and ensure liberty and justice for all. Your community needs you now more than ever.
Regrets? Oh, we're all gonna have them. Doesn't matter who you are or what you do. At some point, you're gonna wish you'd done something differently. You know, the woulda, coulda, shouldas. But let me tell you a couple of things you'll never regret. You'll never regret spending extra time talking to your teenager. Trust me. You'll never regret answering your 3-year-old's question about where the water in the bathtub comes from. And I've never seen anyone wish they hadn't sat in the kitchen laughing with their children and telling them goofy stories about when they were kids. Yeah, sure, we're all gonna have regrets, but talking too much with our kids won't be one of them.
No matter what you talk about, love is what they'll hear. A thought from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Visit us at Mormon.org.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. We had a great half hour with Heath Perkins talking about the Honest Money Report, ladies and gentlemen. Just so you know, gold is at $5,049.40. Yeah, over $5,000 still. Silver, $82.71. $82.71. A dollar of silver cost $82. Our currency is melting down, ladies and gentlemen. Donald trying to keep it under control, but see, small businesses are reporting declining confidence and rising costs. And the reason they are is because they don't have the ability like the big corporations. The big companies can just renegotiate their debt and all that kind of stuff. Small businesses don't just get to run around and renegotiate their debt. That's the problem. Energy prices are fluctuating. Global supply concerns exist, or persist, I should say. They exist too. But anyway, the problem with that is, hey, people don't know what's going to happen with energy. You know, memory for computers, prices are through the roof because of AI, right? Job losses are because of AI, right? Well, now it gets worse because we're starting to see, energy fluctuations. Pretty soon it's going to be, hey, these AI centers, these data centers need all the energy. And so, they're trying to get you to plug your car in. They're trying to get you to, we already can't handle the power grid when the summer comes. Everybody wants to turn on their AC, and you turn on AC and try to plug in your car, and pretty soon the AI, and there's no energy. That's the problem. And then the federal deficit is rising among debt concerns. Some experts are now saying around 2036 or so, hey, the American economy is going to be melting down because we're going to be flat out of the ability to manipulate the money supply. We're going to have to rein that in. But here's the interesting thing. Now, President Trump signals his idea, which I think is a really horrible idea. This is just my opinion to which I'm entitled. I'm not attacking Trump as a person. He's entitled to his economic viewpoints, and I'm entitled to mine. To criticize someone's economic viewpoints is not to criticize them as a person. Let's be very clear indeed. But here's the deal. President Trump has expressed his intentions to increase housing prices. You heard me. President Trump intends to increase housing prices. He says specifically to benefit current homeowners. What? Yeah, he wants to protect current homeowners, despite the broader concerns, ladies and gentlemen, about housing affordability, you see. So you might protect my wealth in my house and say, Sam, you bought your house at $150,000, now it's worth $500,000. Wow, sounds like I'm rich, huh? I have a $500,000 house. The problem with that is it doesn't do me any good to know that my house prices are high. Donald, it doesn't do me any good. Let's say you tell me my house is worth $10 million now. What good does that do me? All the money's tied up in my house unless I want to get debt and borrow against it. See, the current debt-based economic system rewards debt, promotes debt, almost forces debt. That's the problem. Okay? So if you make my house prices higher, you do supposedly protect current homeowners, you say. But like me, well, so I sell my $600,000 house. Well, what if I try to buy another house that's going to cost me $600,000 with high interest rates? It doesn't help me. You can make my house worth $10 million, but if I got to sell my house and borrow another house at $10 million, interest becomes my enemy. House payments become my enemy. Right now, I got a 2.75% interest rate, low interest rate, great house payment. But see, if I were to move and buy the exact house I have now, but move, just need a different location, it'll go through the roof because of the interest. Right? In a statement made last week at a cabinet meeting, Trump opposed driving prices down, aiming instead to protect the investment of homeowners. The problem with that plan is this. Not only can I not move in this plan, I can't have my kids live near me. See, my kids can't afford the $700, $600, whatever $1,000 prices that my house costs. So now my kids can't live near me. So I either stay by, my rich house or whatever you want to call it, or I try to find some cheaper place to move that my kids can live. They say this, meaning Trump's move or idea or belief or intention, stands against a long-standing policy, challenging, but they're trying to balance home affordability with maintaining homeowners' property values. See, that's a losing proposition in a dishonest money game. And let me tell you why. Because when you have dishonest money, hard assets, commodities, they don't change. Let me explain. It's going to cost a lot of money to get a, pound of wheat out of the ground, to grow it, to have water, to all the things that it takes to get it in my hands, in my, basement, where I can then grind it and use it for bread and everything else. That takes a certain amount of effort. That effort is what's called intrinsic value. In other words, hey, we're not making something out of nothing. We're not pretending a $20 bill is worth $20, even though it costs us 10 cents to create it. That's a lie. The real commodities world requires something of labor, something of value to be put in before it has any value recognized. That's the difference between a debt-based economy, a failed economy. Eventually, every system that's gone on a fake fiat money system eventually crumbles because it's dishonest, and dishonesty cannot last. But anyway, it's the intrinsic value. It's the work that it takes to get it out of the ground, whether it be wheat, whether it be gold, whether it be silver. Hey, to mine for gold, to get that gold, to eventually process that gold and mint that gold and give me a honest, confirmed weight and measure. That's the whole government's responsibility, to make sure that when I buy an ounce of gold or get an ounce of gold in my hand, that it really is an ounce of gold, that it is what they say it is, that the weights and measures are properly, etc. Well, so the problem is, as long as we manipulate this, that won't stand against what it takes to get something out of the ground. These commodities matter. Now, Trump also noted during a World Economic Forum speech in Davos that making homes affordable could diminish property values. See, I don't care if my property value diminishes. This is the point. Let's say my house, I bought it at $150,000. That was in 2002, I think. So over 20 years ago. And now it's worth, say, $600,000. Well, if I have to sell it and buy a house for $600,000, I'm not no better off. What if my house went down to $50,000? But I could buy another house for $50,000. See, it doesn't matter. Except for what does matter is when you protect homeowners, you're denying first-time buyers the ability to get into the market. When you drop the prices to make it possible for others to get a home, now you ruin the wealth and the value. What you've done is you've lied. And you've had inflation go, but then you've let people believe they have wealth behind the scene that matches that inflation. And that's where it isn't true. Economists are identifying currently a severe housing shortage in the U.S., estimated between 4 million and 7 million units or houses. That's contributing to outrageous housing costs and high rental prices. Well, let me just throw a little tidbit in there for y'all, for you thinkers out there. If we increase prices, what's that going to do? It's just going to make it worse because people can't afford the new homes at the new costs. They can't. Their dollar, their wages, not keeping up with the inflation. And at some point, you can't get away from that unless you return to honesty. So in my mind, house prices should go down. How much should a house cost? Well, when the government controls most of the land in the western states, that's a problem because there's a limited amount of land available, creating shortages. Then, hey, when it's so expensive for builders to build homes, they're going to be cautious, so they're not going to build as many homes. So now you got a land problem and you got a housing problem. And then what if you bring in a bunch of illegals? What if you just let like 10 million illegals roll into the country? Now you need housing for 10 million illegals on top of an already tight, severe housing shortage. Now what, right? Despite proposing ideas like 50-year mortgages, in my opinion, a psychotic idea, and they say easier access to mortgages via what are called retirement accounts. So now they're going to let you start to rob your retirement account, link it into your home, and pretty soon everything you have will be in jeopardy, right? They say these proposals usually focus on the demand side without addressing the underlying supply shortage. Like I say, you got a supply shortage because you got all kinds of illegals competing for houses. You've got a supply shortage because you're limiting the availability of land, especially in the West. That's why there's land that's fairly cheap in Texas and, in those areas. Arkansas, Louisiana, some of the southern places. It's so expensive, though, in the Rocky Mountains because there's a limited amount of land available, right? So there you have it. And I'm saying I think it's the illegal problem. I think it's the land problem. I think it's the interest rate problem. I think it's the dishonest money problem. I mean, we can keep going, right? But you mix all that together, no wonder we're in trouble. What you got to do is chase the bad money out with good, honest, biblical money. An asset-based economy is the only solution to the problem long term. But they're going to continue to persist until we're broke and melting down. Then what'll happen? Don't know. We'll keep an eye on the ball just for you, though. You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live.
This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would enslave this country in darkness and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in fact.
TheEpochTimes.com.
Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
Cybercrime is exploding. Take Sarah from Sweet Delights, whose world crumbled after having to close with not being able to bounce back. Small businesses are prime targets, but the right strategies can keep yours safe. Jay Hill, CEO of Network Providers, has co-authored The Cyber Playbook Simplifies Cybersecurity for Business Owners with Strategies to avoid costly breaches and fines, build a strong cyber attack response, secure your business with key protections. Cyber threats aren't slowing down, but you can stay ahead. Protect your business. Ensure its security for tomorrow. Get the Cyber Playbook today at networkprovidersinc.com/cyber-playbook or call 385-446-5500 now.
A lot of the economic battle we're facing, ladies and gentlemen, relates to some of the things Trump is doing. And the problem is I love what he's doing, but I don't think he's doing it right. And I know some would say, well, Sam, how do you know? Do you have a degree in economics? No, I don't. But I got a degree in hard knocks. I got a degree in running business. When you say degree, what does that mean? Does it mean I got a government certificate, government education, paid for by the government, free education to tell me how the economy works? They're the ones that are $38 trillion in debt. You think they got a level high place to stand on and I don't have a clue? Yeah, I don't need a degree in anything. I got a degree in hard knocks and in reality, and I got a degree in constitutional currency. No, it's not a government degree. It's just my own self-appointed degree, right? Kind of like I'm a Trump advisor. That's why he needs to listen up. I'm a self-appointed Trump advisor. Anyway, so economists are saying there's a severe housing shortage. You got illegals everywhere. You got the cost of homes going through the roof. And the only thing they can do is make the problem worse by making you pay for your house instead of for 30 years, 50 years. That's a horrible plan. In fact, why not just make it 1,000 years? Why not just say you're going to generationally have these loans, buddy, and you're going to pay forever, and your house payment's only $200? See, why don't we just make the minimum wage $100 an hour for everybody? See, those plans don't work, folks. They're a failure. You can see it when I demonstrate the absurd by being absurd, right? So the way you solve the housing shortage is you make it profitable and reasonable for people to buy homes. You make land affordable and make homes affordable. How do you do that? You do that by backing it with real honest money. All right. House against Donald. This is an interesting headline, but it's economic in nature. Here's the headline. House passes resolution to end Trump's tariffs on Canada. They voted 219 to 211, with 6 Republicans joining all but one Democrat. I guess one Democrat voted against it, and all the other, people voted for it that are Democrats, and they got it done, right? Here's the problem with this. I support tariffs. 100% support them. But I support tariffs being used properly. Not as a weapon, not as a threat, not as a bullying tactic, which is being done by the president now. I reject that. I support tariffs being used as a level playing field mechanism to say, hey, if you communist nations or socialist nations think you're going to use government to subsidize your manufacturing, your production, whatever, to the point where you can dump products on the market, we're not going to let you do that. We're going to slap tariffs on it to stop that. We're going to allow the free market to work, the supply and demand market to work, and we're going to be honest about it. We're going to make a difference by doing it right. And to do it right says let supply and demand work. Do it right says don't create a moral hazard. Do it right says, hey, tariffs are fine. And we can increase or decrease tariffs as we think best, but Congress is really responsible for that mechanism, not just President Trump. And they should not be weaponized. They shouldn't be used as a whipping tool or whatever, or a forced compliance tool. They should be used to create this level playing field that I speak of. And so tariffs, for example, hey, it's a battle between right now the checks and balances in the United States. Congress is supposed to manage these tariffs. So far, they've simply sat there for well over a year, and they haven't done anything. They just let Trump do whatever he wants to. The courts have tried to rein in Donald and this and that, and Congress has sat idly by for the most part. Now Congress is starting to take action. So I support Congress basically ending Trump's tariffs on Canada. Now, here's the problem. I don't want them to end tariffs on Canada entirely. We need to pay for the proper role of constitutional, legitimate government, and therefore to play in the biggest supply and demand-based economic engine the world's ever known, hey, you got to pay a little bit to play. So I don't have a problem with tariffs. So if they want to get rid of the Trump just unilaterally demanded tariffs, I concur with the House. I concur, I guess, with the Democrats, if that's what you want to say. See, that's what they want you to believe. It's this Republican-Democrat divide. That's a lie. You're either for or against things based on principle, based on the Constitution, based on honest money, based on real economic realities and values and truth, not based on we want to follow the Donald. We love Donald. We hate Donald. Oh, it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with economic principles and reality. What's going to help the American people prosper that's constitutional? That's what I'm for. What doesn't help the American people prosper under the Constitution, that's what I'm against. So House presses resolution to end Trump's tariffs on Canada. I don't want all the tariffs to end. Congress, I want you to appropriately figure out where should the tariffs be. I think we should be a partner with Canada. I don't think Canada's our enemy. Now, I think that we ought to basically use our kindness, our diplomatic relationships, our leadership, our open, free, stable markets with a level playing field. We ought to use that, and then Canada would be working with us rather than with the communists in China that say, hey, the supply chain's way shorter working with the United States. They're fair to us in the economy. But see, Trump, by him using these weaponized tariffs, and by Trump saying, hey, I'm going to shut down the bridge that we just built between the United States and Canada, I get that we need a fair deal. I support negotiating for a fair deal, but I also support the checks and balances in the Constitution. And so House passes this resolution. I don't know what's going to happen in the Senate with this, but I don't think Trump will sign it, right? So that's what you got to remember. The House passes a resolution, 219 to 211, because some Republicans went along with the Democrats and got her done. But at the end of the day, I'd like to see appropriate tariffs on Canada and other countries that are low, that are standard, that are uniform, that aren't weaponized, that literally let people play in the markets of the free economy, that we should be the leader, a light on a hill representing. I support that. And so I don't know what the Senate's going to do on this. We'll keep an eye on the ball. But the House is saying, hey, we need to rein in the president on these unilateral tariffs. He's gone kind of crazy. And frankly, in my opinion, he has. And let me tell you why. When you don't really lower taxes, you just keep the IRS in place, but you crank up another revenue generating mechanism called the ERS, or the External Revenue Service. You're requiring businesses to pay, but businesses just pass expenses on to consumers. Okay? If I'm a business and it costs me 10 times more to make a product, I just increase my prices to cover my costs. At some point, I'm not going to produce product at a loss. At some point, I'm not going to produce product if there's not enough margin or profit in it for me to be able to do so. So they're going to pass it along. So now I'm paying the out-of-control taxes already, and I'm paying really the tariffs. It's disaster. And so what Trump needs to do if he wants his tariffs to stand is decrease the other side of the mechanism. Don't give me a one-time handout, socialist redistribution of wealth plan. Write me a check for $2,000, call it a stimulus or whatever. I don't need a sugar high. I don't need a quick shot to the arm. What I need is long-term sustained stability, long-term profitability. And that happens through wise decisions, honest money, supply and demand in the marketplace, using tariffs appropriately, and then use apportionment taxes for the citizens. The states collect the apportionment taxes. They pass them to the general government if the general government's behaving. If the general government doesn't behave or spends us into oblivion, then they can be, use the checks and balances by the states to say, we're not going to send you the money because you're not spending it right. So you'd create a check and a balance there. What they want to do is go to a constitutional convention and pass some kind of a balanced budget, amendment. We don't need a balanced budget amendment. They're already supposed to balance the budget. They just don't do it. You say, well, if we had an amendment there, they would. No, they wouldn't. We have the Second Amendment there, and they don't protect my right to keep and bear arms. You heard whacked out Janine Pirro just repeat, hey, if you bring a gun into D.C., you're going to jail. I don't care if you have a license for it. I don't care if you followed all the laws. The Constitution, Second Amendment says you have the right to keep and bear arms. That right shall not be infringed. What part of that infringement part do they not understand? Anyway, so the House passes resolution to end tariffs on Canada. I think it's a good move. I wonder what the Senate's going to do. I would rein in President Trump and say, President Trump, we can sit down and work together on tariffs here. We can sit down together and reduce taxes on the American people. And that's, if you want to do anything before the midterms that would really gain you ground, abolish the IRS. Okay? Make a difference. Shock the world. And do something wise. Right? Now, believe it or not, the Trump administration now says they'll make an additional payment towards the United States $2.19 billion debt to the United Nations. Yeah, they say it's the regular budget. He'll go ahead and pony up the cash within weeks. According to Mike Waltz, who's the UN ambassador. Additionally, the U.S. has $2.4 billion of unpaid peacekeeping assessments. And Trump has now signed their big, massive spending bill, which allocates $3.1 billion. Waltz stated the payment is a significant down payment on annual dues. It is a significant part. Trump is trying to tie the money to UN reform. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, I think it is, warned of imminent financial collapse of the 193-member organization just last month. And he said that because, hey, the United States isn't paying. What Donald would say, and he's spot on, hey, why should we pay so much? We're paying way more than our fair share. He's right. The only question I have for the Donald is, why are you agreeing to pay the United Nations? We need Congress and the president to get together and say, we're out of the United Nations. It's unaffordable. They're criminals. They don't use their money wisely. We shouldn't have to pay the whole bill. Why are the taxpayers subsidizing everybody else? We're $38 trillion in debt. We don't have the money for that. All right, there you have it. That is the Honest Money Report, brought to you by freewatercoinco.com. I'm Sam Bushman. Thanks for watching. We keep an eye on all news, so you don't have to. All you got to do is tune into Liberty Roundtable, right? Check it out, libertyroundtable.com. We're syndicated by the Loving Liberty Network. LovingLiberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the Republic of the United States of America.